Okay, we are recording. Hello, people. Welcome to my podcast. This is take two of the Better Than Bobby Altoff podcast. Welcome to my podcast, and I'm your host, Jesus Munoz. This is going to go to the YouTube channel if you guys are wondering, and also then doing this for an assignment for my environmental studies class on food, agriculture, and the environment. My topic is food security. Started as food security, but specifically in South Central LA. And I say it started as food insecurity, but it kind of became something a little different. And I guess I'll explain that as we go on. So for the sake of time. Yeah, my name is Jesus. I'm a student at UCSB, environmental studies. So basically I know more than you. And yeah, I think let's get started. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm sorry I don't have a theme song. But all right, we're going to start with my first article. So my topic's food security, food insecurity, and in Los Angeles, but I thought we'd start more global. So that said, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to go to the first article that starts really global. And this is the FAO report of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. And this is their 2022 report on the state of food security and nutrition in the world. So yeah, this is really global, but it still pertains to the issue that I'm trying to cover. So I kind of went off this conclusionary chapter, if you will. And yeah, I'm just gonna go through some notes that I have here. And yeah, okay. So these are kind of like just highlights and numbers that I found. All right. So the world is going backwards and we're basically screwed in our efforts to end world hunger, food security, malnutrition, in all forms. We're 8 years from the 2030 SDG goals, which are the Sustainable Development Goals. So there's been some progress, but it's been insufficient. Between 7 and 850 million people are hungry globally, 2022. Almost 200 million more since the SDGs began. Again, the Sustainable Development Goals. Much of it since 2019, since COVID. And some more numbers, 2.31 billion are moderately to severely food insecure. So that's 1 in 3 people, 350 million more than in pre-COVID times. Healthy diets also more out of reach. As of 2020, 3.1 billion couldn't afford a healthy diet, which is 112 more compared to 2019. Of the seven 2030 global nutrition targets, only breastfeeding and stunting among children less than 5 years have improved since 2012, end quote. No region has improved in decreasing adult obesity, and plus overweight children less than 5 years is increasing in more than half countries, representing much of the global south. Not the north, the south. So that's like Africa, South Africa, South Asia, the Caribbean. Then all of this does not fully account for COVID setbacks though. Some other setbacks are the war in Ukraine, global food and energy prices soaring, global economic growth has been dwindling since 2022. Climate events continue to also disrupt agricultural production. It's a major reason why nations struggle with food security, nutrition, health, and other, etc. Quote, combined with rising costs and growing inequalities, end quote, will make food security and nutrition worse until ... agri-food systems are changed. And some words that are tossed around related to this changing of our agri-food systems are resilience, transformation, sustainability, inclusivity, and affordability. So these are the things that people have in mind when they're talking about changing the agri-food system. Recession makes it hard for government to invest more in agri-food systems, but article argues much more can be done with existing resources, and that's a big idea. That's the main theme within this article or report, such as rethinking how to reallocate existing budgets to make for more cost-effective and nutritious foods while increasing access and affordability from sustainable agri-food models and systems. So it's very lofty goals. And that's another kind of theme within this article is their solutions are very very up there. Yeah, they're tough solutions for sure. Tall orders, I guess they call them. Some last numbers, final numbers here. Worldwide governments allocated almost on average 630 billion yearly from 2013 to 2018 to the food and agricultural sector. And 70% of this goes to producers. About 20% goes to general services to the sector, and 72, well, about like 10% of that 630 billion goes to consumers, which are us, the consumers, right? So we get the least of that funding, and producers get the lion's share. And really, it says 70%, but it's more like if you include the general services percentage, it's more like 90%, because that all goes to the agricultural sector pretty much to support it. And then the last goes to us to help us afford food and stuff like that. But clearly, it's not enough. So there's going to be a lot of transitional policies similar to like the climate change revolution kind of thing. Like there's different fields and different peoples that are going to be affected. So there's those things we have to take into account. Some safety nets might be in order. The stakeholders and institutions within different countries are going to have to facilitate reform, hopefully, and not make it worse. They're going to be crucial in engaging, especially the stakeholders, to get support, because obviously we're in a system where we prioritize profit, basically. So that's the first article, and I just wanted to use it to like paint the picture, globally, what it looks like, the whole situation with food insecurity, and it's pretty urgent stuff, to say the least. And then we zoom in and we go local. We talk about a place that's near and dear, I guess, to me, my heart, whatever. And that's Los Angeles. So I'm gonna reshare my screen for that. Hold on. Shoot, hold on. Zoom. Am I right? Am I right, ladies? All right, here we go. So this article is really cool because it just mapped out like what their environment looks like in 3 neighborhoods in South Los Angeles. And the 3 neighborhoods don't really matter. It's more the fact that it's in South Los Angeles, the food environment in it, and what it looks like, what access, availability, quality, and marketing practices look like. So this article kind of just like took 3 neighborhoods, took 3 churches within those neighborhoods, and as their like areas of like reference, I guess, and just saw and took kind of what kinds of food outlets or what the food environment looked like there, how many grocery stores, how many restaurants, pharmacies, food banks, all these things they considered as food outlets, and just took note of it, account of it, to see how disparate or not the situation really was. And surprise, surprise, it's obviously pretty bad. It's not the greatest. I mean, we don't really have to go through too much detail, but some of the highlights, I guess, I could just read off here. Across the 3 neighborhoods, we found 37 brick and mortar food sources, 14 emergency and alternative food sources, 5 schools and 2 parks. The availability of health food varied by neighborhood. In neighborhood 1, 58% of the tracts were food secure. Several supermarkets and small markets met healthy standards, and the index of unhealthy to healthy food sources was 4. So 8 unhealthy to 2 healthy foods. Pretty not that impressive, not that great. In contrast, 50% of the tracts were food secure in neighborhood 3. I mean, even those numbers aren't that great. And only 10% were food secure in neighborhood 2. That's just the worst of it. That's pretty bad. These neighborhoods had only 1 supermarket or large grocery store each, and each neighborhood had fewer small markets and more restaurants than neighborhood 1. And each neighborhood, sorry, I have to read that, had fewer small markets and more restaurants than neighborhood 1. The index of unhealthy to healthy food sources in the neighborhood 2 was 7 to 1, moderately unhealthy. The unhealthiest food environment was in neighborhood 3, which had a higher number of unhealthy brick and mortar food sources. We were unable to calculate an index for neighborhood 3 because we found no healthy sources. More than half of the food retailers across the 3 neighborhoods did not sell any fresh produce or fruits. In neighborhood 1, 3 of 8 stores sold a wide variety of produce, whereas in other neighborhoods, only 1 store offered a wide variety. So this just paints a picture. It's like pretty bad. Like there's hardly any grocery stores, and they're not places like Whole Foods or Sprouts. And the reason for this article is just to paint that picture, to see, for people to see who maybe don't live in Los Angeles, what it looked like, or even if they did, just to serve as a reminder, I guess, of what the situation is down there. Yeah, definitely not like Santa Barbara with the Sprouts and the Whole Foods and all that. Bristol Farms. I mean, downtown LA is more affluent, I guess you could say, in some ways, but it's not like South Los Angeles, where it's more of a desert. And it's more of an apartheid than a desert. But yeah. Apparently, according to my class. Thank you, Professor. Yeah, so I mean, I don't think we really need to go further. Mobile food vendors outside of these schools, neighborhoods, most of them were unhealthy. They didn't really have permits, and that's the situation outside of churches and schools where our kids go. Subway restaurant franchise was the only restaurant in the 3 neighborhoods that had healthy food standards, and each one had 1 Subway. So there you go. They were relying on fast food a little bit. So yeah, the kind of action this source provided was for the churches themselves to promote more like healthier channels for nutritious food via food banks, food distribution networks, etc. I might include like people gardening themselves and doing that kind of thing. And yeah, I think a main thing for this article was for them to like prove the effectiveness of mapping these details when it comes to like coming up with solutions. And that's cool too, even though it wasn't particularly the purpose of this podcast. But yeah, still pretty cool. And we're gonna move on to another one. All right. So this one's on a solution. The last two are more like on solutions, but the solutions are kind of problems as well, but they're still solutions, but they just have problems within themselves. So like for the farmers markets, this article, title, Do Farmers Markets Increase Access to Healthy Food for All Communities? Comparing markets in 24 neighborhoods in Los Angeles. And the emphasis is all communities. And obviously, the answer is yes and no. Yes, because farmers markets obviously are always a win, always a win, period, right? But the thing is, the no is that they're better in some neighborhoods than others, and that's just the fact of the matter. And that's just a segue to some deeper kind of discussion that is still related to food insecurity, and why in the beginning of this podcast I was like that it became something other than just talking about food security or insecurity. It becomes like why these things are the way they are. So this article was cool because it kind of served as a segue for that. There's something that people love is farmers markets, right? It's always a solution for people. But there are still problems even within them. And that was kind of just like the main idea with this article. They compared the markets in 24 neighborhoods. Obviously, some neighborhoods had better, well, it's not, I don't know if it's obvious, but some neighborhoods had better, what turned out to be just access to better farmers markets, period, than other places did. And that was just the sad truth about it. And that's the deeper discussion that we're going to talk about in my next article. But some more on this one, just to go over it. Yeah, there's spatial inequality. So places in Beverly Hills get better farmers markets than places like in South Central, like Watts or Compton or Boyle Heights or places like that of more predominant, like there are more people of color, lower income. The more affluent places get the better goods and more of them. And really, that's just the gist of this one. The value of farmers markets, no matter what, they're a win because they just provide like alternative food sources for people, especially in disadvantaged communities where there's, as we saw in the last article, like almost none or none. It's just a win, even if it isn't the best sometimes. And a lot of them are getting better. But yeah, so that's the value of farmers markets, kind of always a win. A role for planning. This is where we're going to touch on the next article, so I'll leave it for that maybe. Farmers markets in LA, identifying what is sold at farmers markets in LA and why. I kind of went over that. It has to do with just the racial, like social legal practices that happen within the county. What else? Yeah. Do farmers markets serve as a consistent source of fresh vegetables? Yes, they do. But again, in some places more than others, because some places the farmers markets begin to compete even within themselves to go to places where they can make obviously more money. Maybe there's more people who can afford it. They compete for that. So those places are like hotspots as opposed to places where people can't afford it as much, unfortunately. But they still go up there, and sometimes it's hard for not even that, but it's sometimes hard for people to get like for the managers of the farmers markets to gain permits to like have the farmers markets in these places, in some places. So that's another challenge. And let's see, this might be lastly, do farmers markets help alleviate disparities? That is an interesting question that I'm going to leave alone, I think. I think I'll leave that. But I'll just read this. Our results show a relationship between neighborhood poverty and the overall size and the number of booths at farmers markets. So yeah, the table 5 illustrates that farmers markets in low-income communities are significantly smaller and have fewer booths compared with those in more affluent communities. Further, although the difference in the numbers of booths overall offering fruits and vegetables in poor and affluent neighborhoods is not statistically significant in December, it is in June. Okay, so that's just more detail. Barriers, I kind of talked about that. What we don't know. They are, but they need improving. So our farmers markets, are a remedy for the disparate impacts of food insecurity. They are, but they'll obviously work better in combination with other remedies, and even the markets themselves can be improved. And that's pretty much the gist of this article. Lastly, this is like the best one, I think, because it just gets to the root of it, or it begins to, at least, maybe. It's like it's just like the deepest point I got through through this rabbit hole, I guess, of food security issues. I mean, this is a really long article. I only have a few minutes. So the main thing here is that the reason there is like food security in the first place is because of the way the system's set up. It's not just about capitalism. I mean, it is, but you can't, it's just too broad to say it's just capitalism. Like more specifically, I guess, it's about the way we like zone places and yeah, I mean, it's just the city planning, like it's not coincidental, like it's not accidental or whatever, it's on purpose. It's because of poverty, racial injustice, discrimination. It's about white flight. It's about keeping people in and others out. It's about not my backyard, not in my backyard. It's about all these things, in my opinion. Or, I mean, even according to this article. Maybe I'll just read the abstract here. The SCF, the South Central Farm, this is what it's mostly about. I'll just read the abstract. I'll shut up. The South Central Farm in Los Angeles was a 14-acre urban farm in one of the highest concentrations of impoverished residents in the county. It was destroyed in July 2006. This article analyzes its epic as a landscape of resistance to discriminatory legal and planning practices. It then presents its creation and maintenance as an issue of environmental justice and argues that there was a substantive rationale on the basis of environmental justice and planning ethics that should have provided sufficient grounds for the city to prevent its dismantling. Based on qualitative case study methodology, the study contributes to the formulation of creation and preservation rationales for community gardens and other commons threatened by eventual dismantlement in capitalist societies. So I think this kind of says it all. There's this nice little thing here where it's an excerpt from Patricia's The Journey, 1980. It's between aunt and her daughter, I think, or her niece, and she's saying, you have found the secret of our journeys. And the girl asks what? And she says, que las flores siempre ganan. The flowers always win. So that just kind of gives like, that's just like the whole, what this article is all about. It talks about the pressures, the oppression, the discrimination, the setbacks, the powers that be that just always, you know, think they win or try to win. But in reality, like the excerpt says, it gives also like some hope that really it's the flowers that always win. So yeah, as long as we persist. And yeah, I think that's enough about this. I mean, I could go on, but then I'll have an hour edit, which I do have, and you guys can watch if you want. Just subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just kidding, or not. But yeah, I mean, the mayor was mixed in it. It's a lot about who we elect. It's a lot about us taking those positions, and by us, I mean like people of color, people who are legally disenfranchised, like it says here. That's part of our plight of taking power back, of restoring like some sense of balance to the world, right? Not to get all cheesy, but that's what it is. Yeah, how community gardens impact our health. And you know what? I think I'll let someone better than me just say it all. So here goes. This is my last little thing, and we're done. So here we go. Ron Finley, gangster gardener, South Central, LA. Enjoy.
I live in South Central. This is South Central. Liquor stores, fast food, vacant lots. So the city planners, they get together and they figure they're going to change the name South Central to make it represent something else. So they change it to South Los Angeles. Like this is going to fix what's really going wrong in the city. This is South Los Angeles. Liquor stores, fast food, vacant lots. Just like 26.5 million other Americans, I live in a food desert. South Central Los Angeles, home of the drive-through and the drive-by. Funny thing is, the drive-throughs are killing more people than the drive-bys. People are dying from curable diseases in South Central Los Angeles. For instance, the obesity rate in my neighborhood is like 5 times higher than, say, Beverly Hills, which is like probably 8-10 miles away. I got tired of seeing this happening. And I wonder, how would you feel if you had no access to healthy food? If every time you walk out your door, you see the ill effects that the present food system have on your neighborhood? I see wheelchairs bought and sold like used cars. I see dialysis centers popping up like Starbucks. And I figured this has to stop. So I figured that the problem is the solution. Food is the problem, and food is the solution. Plus, I got tired of driving 45 minutes round trip to get an apple that wasn't impregnated with pesticides. So what I did, I planted a food forest in front of my house. It's like it's my gospel. I'm telling people, grow your own food. Growing your own food is like printing your own money. Thank you. Gardening is the most therapeutic and defiant act you can do, especially in the inner city. Plus, you get strawberries. I remember this time, there was this mother and a daughter came. It was like 10:30 at night, and they were in my yard. And I came out, and they looked so ashamed. And I'm like, man, it made me feel bad that they were there. And I told them, you don't have to do this like this. This is on the street for a reason. It made me feel ashamed to see people that was this close to me that was hungry. And this only reinforced why I do this. And people ask me, Finn, aren't you afraid people are going to steal your food? And I'm like, hell no, I ain't afraid they're going to steal it. That's why it's on the street. That's the whole idea. I want them to take it, but in the same time, I want them to take back their health. We got to flip the script on what a gangster is. If you ain't a garden, you ain't gangster. Get gangster with your shovel, okay? And let that be your weapon of choice. So basically, if you want to meet with me, if you want to meet, don't call me. If you want to sit around in cushy chairs and have meetings where you talk about doing some shit, If you want to meet with me, come to the garden with your shovel so we can plant some shit. Peace. Thank you.
I just realized I didn't say why I chose this project, but I chose this project because if y'all couldn't tell, that is a place where I grew up, the kind of environment I grew up in. And in some ways, I'm still kind of suffering from a little, or at least have some trauma that I'm still dealing with, if that makes sense. But yeah, that's why I chose it, because it's something I have lived experience with, something that I saw a lot and still see a lot, even in places like Santa Barbara. And it just sucks to see it. And I mean, I gotta give the same answer for why I joined this class. And that's just why I joined the class, because I just want to try and make these things better, or at least be more aware of these problems and solutions, and so I could speak on it and maybe even who knows, inspire others or inspire myself to do something about, which is why I also chose to do a podcast, because I feel like that's the one thing maybe I can do, is, if nothing else, is speak on it, and hopefully others will listen and things will happen. But yeah, that's why. Thank you. And that's at least part of the reason why. But yeah, thank you and goodbye.